Hey, everybody. Welcome to the second round of Yes, I Have Ovaries. Wow, it's a lot more intimidating being up here on this stage than it was yesterday in a nice little quiet conference room. So, my name is Hernandez. I've been an engineering manager for most of my career, over 20 years. I am old. Most recently, I'm director of systems engineering at Linden Lab. If you've ever heard of Linden Lab, it's because you've heard of Second Life. If you haven't heard of Second Life, that's because it's 13 years old, and that's okay. It's still cool. Project Sandstar will be out later this year. It's even cooler. And the life of an engineering manager is insane, hilarious, frustrating, and inspiring all at the same time. I absolutely love my job. And I have learned a ton, usually by making enough mistakes to fill a library. I'm a learn by doing sort of girl. And over time, I've become increasingly concerned with the concepts of diversity and inclusion in software engineering as a whole. And have started to formalize what I've learned over the years into more concrete action. So today I want to cover some of the challenges in trying to build a diverse workforce and some practical techniques that I've incorporated as part of my attempts to address this issue in my personal life, professional life. My personal life's already diverse enough. So what's your story? When I'm getting to know people, I want to hear their story and maybe share mine. So who am I? Well, I am Mexican-Irish, Tara Hernandez. You could probably figure that out. I am married to a woman. I have 2 children. I am over 40. I occasionally have a debilitating medical condition. If you were my manager, you would not legally be allowed to ask me about any of that because of, this is all protected information under the Equal Employment Opportunity Act, which is a very important piece of federal legislation that attempts to prevent discrimination in the work environment. But it's also a bummer, because if you want to make sure that you are creating the most inclusive work environment for someone like me, that would all be really interesting information for you to know. So sometimes this sort of information will come out in unexpected ways. When I was a wee lass, a long time ago, last millennium, an older male coworker caught me holding my stomach during a meeting and I was trying to be subtle about it. But I was actually in quite a bit of pain. And for whatever reason, he decided he wanted to know what was going on during the meeting. So he leans over. Are you going to throw up? No. Are you getting sick? No. Are you hungover? So I'm getting a little irritated, and I really want him to shut up. And I'm like, if you must know, I think one of the cysts on my ovaries just popped. You have what on your ovaries? True story. And the meeting broke up pretty quickly after that. There really wasn't anything that could follow that conversation. Afterwards, my manager felt obligated to talk to me about the fact I was coming to work when I was suffering symptoms. If you're curious, polycystic ovarian syndrome, it sucks. She correctly deduced that I was worried about appearing like a slacker. God forbid I take a sick day, right? I was young then. I'll take them now. So in the end, despite how mortifying it was to have this interaction with my oblivious, awkward coworker in this meeting, I came away feeling pretty awesome about my manager, right? And this was also my first clue that the engineering manager is the frontline fighter in the battle for an inclusive work environment. So, what does it mean to have such an environment? There are different ways of approaching this. I try to look at it in the broadest of definitions, straight out of dictionary.com, because books are so passé. Not excluding any section of society. It's as simple as that. From an employment perspective, it means to be supportive of any combination of gender, religion, sexuality, race, physical ability. Some things are easy. If you practice a religion that celebrates something that's not already a national holiday, you're going to get that time off. This is not a question. If you're in a wheelchair, you're going to get a ramp and a really nice adjustable desk. It means that no matter how crazy successful your sales organization is, they are never, ever allowed to go to a strip club on company time or on company dollars. It's just not going to happen, right? This is easy. This is obvious. It almost doesn't count to do this in this day and age. But I also eventually realized that as a manager, you also have to go beyond this simple starting point. We have to think about not just being supportive, but also being inviting. It goes from the passive act of taking care of what's in front of you to actively trying to foster diversity on your team by helping create it. So, why does having a diverse set of employees matter? So there's been a lot of articles written about this topic in the last couple of years. For the next couple of slides, I'm just going to quote some really smart people. I do infrastructure engineering, and I believe that plagiarism is the most sincere form of flattery. So here we have Scotty Page, who's a professor at University of Michigan, Intel CEO Brian Krzadnich. I actually had to look up how to say his name. These are great quotes, right? People from different backgrounds bring different perspectives and experiences. That in turn, hopefully, and often, will foster creativity that usually results in better problem solving, right? If you think about it in those terms, it seems kind of obvious, but you have to think about it in those terms. Customer representation. So, this is kind of obvious when you think about it, right? If you want to develop a product that women will like to use, you might want to have some women participate in designing it, or at least vetting it, right? If you want your product to appeal to the ever-growing population of Latino and African-American consumers, you may want to have Latino and African-American employees helping you out. And remember, this is a population that's going to break 50% of the total population in the United States in the not-too-distant future. So that should be enough practical incentive for anybody. This idea is so powerful that Paradigm, Joel Emerson over there, CEO, this is their business. They built an entire business around helping companies become more diverse because of this reason. My favorite, why wouldn't you want a diverse environment? My favorite answer to this question happened last year when Justin Trudeau won the election to become Prime Minister of Canada. So congratulations, Canadians, if there are any Canadians in the room. I'm jealous, let me just put it that way. When he was sworn in, presented his cabinet, 31 people. He said he wanted to present to Canada a cabinet that looks like Canada. So it's important to note it was not a perfect ethnic blend to match Canadian demographics, but what it was half women. Somebody asked him why he opted for gender equality, and this is how he responded. I love this. This is actually from his swearing in, I swear to God. What, are you stupid? I mean, it's really painful that we have to keep having this conversation, right? However, until a prime minister can select 15 women for his cabinet without it being a surprise, until the average tech company by default has demographics that include a wide variety of people, and until, in fact, we have an industry of leaders who believe as Justin Trudeau believes, we have to keep this conversation going. Okay, let's talk some numbers. I swear this is the only slide that has numbers on it. I will put out a heavy caveat that I got these numbers from the internet, so your mileage may vary on accuracy. So Mark Twain, lies, damned lies, and statistics. But I did do my best to try and correlate these numbers from different sources, so I should be more or less in the ballpark. So all that said, look it up yourself. But in the US, women comprise around 51% of the population, 47% of the total labor force. They make up about 30% of high-tech industry, but within that, only around 16% are in technical roles. And here's the interesting number, 23% in leadership roles. Now, that might look like an interesting number, but let's think about where women are most prevalent in high-tech industry in leadership roles. HR, finance, corporate G&A. This is great. I'm not saying they shouldn't be there, but that's why there's such a much bigger number in leadership than there is in technical. For ethnically underrepresented populations, particularly Latinos and African Americans, the numbers are harder to discover because it's not tracked as well. Some high-tech firms recently have started self-reporting, so we can at least get a piece of the picture, and it's grim. As you can see in high-tech industry, you only see 9%, and this is just from this big firm self-reporting. So Google, Facebook, Twitter, those kinds of companies. So you can imagine for JoBloStartup.com down the street, it's probably way worse. We only see 5% in actual technical roles, 4% leadership positions. And then we extrapolate. Now we get the really bad news. We extrapolate from that for Latino and African American women, right? I can't even imagine how low they are. It's appalling. And there's even more appalling, there's no numbers that actually tell us how bad it really is. I know for a fact that at several companies, I was the only one who was even part Latina in the engineering organization. And in many cases, there were no African Americans, male or female. Thankfully, that's not true where I'm at, but it's true at too many companies. So, that said, everybody remember yesterday? Regina Wallace-Jones, bucking statistical trends, right? She's awesome, I love her. So, what do we do about it? So there are probably a million reasons why high-tech industry is mostly white and mostly male, and there are many smart and dedicated people trying to help out in this area. Obviously, we're all here at this conference because of the efforts of Elena Percival and her crew, and Elena's awesome because she's big picture, and we need big picture people. I am not a big picture person. I like to start small and work incrementally. This has worked really well for me as an engineer and as a manager, and the first place you can start to make a helpful change as a manager is in how you advertise for an open position on your team. Here we have the sort of language you'll see in some engineering job descriptions, okay? Rock star, wanted a rock star. I've seen this on so many actual job descriptions. It drives me nuts. Proven game changer, fearless leader, awesome performer under pressure. What does this say to a candidate, okay? You must be the best of the best because we know if you're not. Be fearless because people around here are afraid. And you need to be able to work under pressure because man around here, it does not let up, right? This is the opposite of inviting. This is not inviting. So, but some people will like this stuff, right? These type of job description will tend to invite people who are extremely confident in themselves, sometimes unreasonably so. They believe themselves to be mad geniuses who can overcome any challenge, rightly or not. They may also be used to being the alpha dog of their particular pack, possibly not work well with others, especially if all you're hiring is alpha dogs. I'm sure all of you have experienced that once or twice. People applying for these so-called rock star positions are likely going to be more expensive. They may possibly decide they're bored and need a change of scenery after a short period of time because after all, they're rock stars. Live fast, die young. Now, here's the most important thing about a rock star engineer, clarify, is what it's actually intended to mean. Not this. A rock star engineer is an engineer who gets a lot of quality work done at a higher rate than the average engineer. That's all. The reality is you could be a rock star and not think that you are, and would in fact avoid a job description that uses these words. Some of my biggest so-called rock stars have been shy, humble people who would not dream of describing themselves as anything other than decent, if that. So, we try a different way of recruiting that will hopefully sound friendly, more inviting to many different types of people. To do that, I have to really think first, what is my biggest priority for the role? So in my case, I run an organization full of infrastructure and support engineers. So I tend to need creative problem solvers who are good at collaborating and have a helpful attitude. So this is my priority, okay? This is going to be true whether you're a junior or senior engineer. So I'm not going to go out of my way to use those words, okay? And let's think about who technical women are on average, okay? They're certainly not all like Sheryl Sandberg. I'm not like Sheryl Sandberg. There are a lot of women who are trying to get into tech through non-traditional roles like boot camps. That's becoming a thing, and a great one. There are women who are amazing engineers and it would never occur to them to ask for a promotion, let alone a raise. These women don't have the title senior, but it doesn't mean that they're not smart or motivated or that they couldn't bring something to the team, right? So therefore, I don't want to do anything that might make them hesitate about applying for my role. So you might think, well, a senior position won't apply if they don't think it's another senior role, and that's true, that's a risk. But many will, right? And then we can tell them on a case-by-case basis, by the way, this could totally be a senior position if you're interested. What I want most of all is somebody who gets interested in the job and the technology that we're using and cares about that more than a specific title, right? Now, to that, my department at Linden Lab has started using the following categories in job descriptions. What you'll do, the description of the type of work a particular team is focusing on. I have one team that's building a new production infrastructure in AWS, cloud. I have another team that's building a continuous deployment mechanism, building Jenkins and Python and all kinds of other automated things. There's another team in my department, not under me, that's doing a new cashier and payment system. So we want candidates who are interested in that kind of work, first and foremost. What you'll need to do it section talks about some of the things we hope you'll bring to the table. Do you have experience with this kind of stuff? Are you likely to rise to the types of challenges we're going to see, and have you seen them before? What we like and are interested in, sometimes we'll describe this as what we use and teach, is where we'll get really specific on different types of technology. On my teams, as I said, we like all kinds of automation, a major part of what we do. We use AWS, but if you have experience in Global Cloud Engine or OpenStack, that counts, right? If you're a Ruby expert, that's okay. I figure you could probably teach yourself Python if you present that kind of attitude. It's the intent and the area, not the specifics. Going back to previous slide. Expert in, I don't care what you're expert in. I want to know that you can learn. What I want to say most of all by the type of language I'm using in my job descriptions is I'm looking for someone who wants to partner with us and be a great teammate, not someone who's more interested in being the glorified hero of their little fiefdom. Okay. All right, now it starts to get, now we're cooking with gas. Picking candidates, huge lesson in unconscious bias. Here are the most common scenarios. Alan gets picked over Ellen. James gets picked over Jamal. Ivy League gets picked over state school, right? There are a couple ways to approach this problem. One is to have a system that strips names, dates, education, any other potentially identifying information from the resume in order to level the playing field. Well, that's great, except it's really time-consuming and labor-intensive. And for example, when I worked at Pixar Studios for 11 years, I remember talking to the recruiting team, and they got 1,000 resumes a day. I can tell you for a fact that their system for filtering those resumes was hugely biased because they had to start somewhere. If you went to CalArts, pull all those resumes out first. That's a bias, right? Kind of a practical one. So this is not an easy problem. The other approach is to recognize the current amount or lack of diversity on your team and to go out of your way to look for opportunities to improve on it. So if your team is currently all white and all male, you need to find non-white, non-male resumes. And this also can be tricky without a little help because you can't always just tell. For example, if you see Charlie White, could be short for Charlotte, and she could be Puerto Rican African-American mix, which would be awesome with a last name like White. It could happen. You need to source resumes more creatively. University student alumni organizations is one example. They're actually hiring services that now specialize in this sort of thing. My personal favorite, conferences and meetups, networking, face-to-face. Hi, I'm Tara, how you doing? I have some hiring that I'm not, but I have. We did a Women Who Code meetup that my company hosted, and we hired somebody a lovely young lady who had just graduated from General Assembly. Her Linden name is Bubble, she's adorable. My Linden name is Baloo, I am not adorable. And does this mean that if you find the white male who's absolutely perfect for the job that you're not going to hire him? No, of course not. He's perfect for the job. He's going to fit your team. That's not the thing I'm talking about. It's that he's not the only one that you found, and that you've given an opportunity for someone who is not white and is not male to have their fair shot, okay? So how do we do that? All right, you've got your set of candidates. How do you pick the best one? It's generally agreed, I say that without a citation, I'm sorry, but it is generally agreed that traditional technical interviews do not tend to favor women, and specifically. Submitting candidates to complex technical questions that during a normal workday they would have more time to solve and probably questions that they'd be able to ask other people is not necessarily a good indicator whether or not they'd be a good employee if they're having to do it under time pressure by themselves. So I have an example here. So Google, for a long time, had a very famously tough interview process. They'd ask questions like, calculate how many golf balls will fit in a bus. Or, a man pushed his car to a hotel and lost his fortune. What happened? I have, in 20-something years, never, ever, ever seen anything like that on a product description sheet. Ever. Now, in some cases, Google would apparently not want to waste an engineer's time to do a technical interview, so they'd ask technical questions off the sheet. I had somebody who went through that. With, heaven forbid, that the candidate have a question, because the recruiter sure as heck isn't going to be able to answer it, right? That's what any decent engineer would do. Hey, I have a question, I want to clarify, whatever. I know several amazing people that I would recommend in a heartbeat that failed to get past this process, which means Google lost out on some huge, potentially awesome hires, right? And they finally figured that out, so they don't do this anymore. There was actually an article today in SF Gate about how there's questions you're not allowed to ask in a Google interview anymore. For this reason. Because the only thing they did was find candidates who were really good at passing their interview process. That has nothing to do with whether or not they'd be a good employee, okay? I used to get called by Google to interview, and I always turned them down. I was terrified of that interview process. I thought for certain there was no way I would pass it. I wasn't even willing to try. Would I have been a great employee for Google? My boss likes me. Maybe, but I wasn't willing, right? And I'm sure I'm not the only one. And again, that's Google's loss. And I'm not just trying to pick on Google, by the way. I think they're a great company, but it's a really public example of how your interviewing process can be very public and not get you the results that you're hoping for. So, actually doing the interviewing. So many people have said to me, I suck at giving interviews. How many people think they suck at giving interviews? Right? Okay. Which means, going on to number 2, you have to prep your interviewing team. As a manager, you need to do some legwork. Ed Catmull, who's the president of Pixar Studios, said, try and hire somebody who's smarter than you. That's a great quote. It's really hard to do, but that's a good goal for an interview. But how do you do that? I knew one engineer who had it as a point of honor that no one ever passed his technical questions during an interview. Point of honor. Okay? He said he learns more from the failure. Well, that's great. So what if you're the candidate who's failing? What do you take out of that? 1, you're not smart enough. Or 2, oh my God, that guy was an asshole. I don't want to work here. Neither one of those are going to get you the result that you want as a company. And this is fundamentally the opposite of inviting. Okay? To me, if I'm holding on to our value of building an inclusive work environment, the interview process should not involve pain. I don't want there to be pain associated with this. It should be a conversation. Do you fit us and do we fit you? One thing I'm a fan of is behavioral interviewing. Are you folks familiar with behavioral interviewing? Ask questions about past history in order to project future growth. And you can do this for technical questions. What's the hardest problem you've ever solved and how did you do it? What was your biggest failure and why? Or one that I tend to like, here's a problem we've been struggling with, how would you approach it? And by the way, if you give us a good idea, you're almost guaranteed to have the job. So, here we go. Sorry, still a little nervous. So now you've hired the most amazing person ever. She is smart, motivated, creative, cheerful, works hard. You as her manager want to keep her happy and productive. And remember from the beginning of my talk, all those things that you won't know much about, except that I told you, and now we're friends. Now you have to start really paying attention and figure out what makes your new employee tick. What makes her the most professionally satisfied? What bums her out? Does she love regular one-on-ones, or does she like to be able to just drop in and say hi? And I love this quote, right? This articulates so well the feelings that I have evolved over the years as an engineering manager. And it annoys me that I couldn't say it as well as he does. Everybody knows who Richard Branson is, Virgin guy, right? I love Virgin America. And it's so true. Your new employee, you want to earn her trust, because if she trusts you and feels like that you're taking care of her as an employee, she's going to turn around and work really hard for you and take care of your business and by the way, make you look good on the way. That's what employees do for you. They make you look good. And this philosophy is opposite of treating people that they should be grateful they have a job, that they're easily replaceable, that they have to conform themselves to some generic standard to be your employee, rather than you as their manager adapting yourself to honor their individuality. Okay? It's building a relationship of trust that says you care about their success, will support them as necessary, and in return, they're going to work their ass off, right? And having all of that in place should translate into good things for your company. Almost done. I'll tell you right now, sometimes it's the most important tool I have as a manager. Your employees are human, and when they get frustrated or upset, they need to be listened to, particularly in a diverse environment, right? In a heterogeneous environment, people have different ways that they might get upset. Other people are unaware of it. You have to moderate this. And it's not just women. I've had guys break down in my office. So building trust is a huge way of helping resolve those. It's also really important for positive reasons. That woman who would never before ask for promotion, damn it, I want her to ask me. I want her to tell me what her goals are so that I can help her achieve them. And the only way we can do that is if she trusts me. Right. So here's the epilogue of my story and the reason I'm here today. Over the course of my career, I've been unbelievably blessed by having worked with many great men and women as a manager, as a mentor, and I would not have achieved what I have achieved in my career without them. And while the men have been great, it's really the women who have stuck with me because it was easier to see myself in them, right? Their success told me that I could succeed. And sometimes if I had an emergency need for feminine hygiene products, a woman boss is helpful. This happens. It's 2 o'clock. You're an hour from home. What are you going to do? And the sad fact of the matter is there's not enough of us, okay? At one point, my company lost a great candidate because she was so concerned that there were no women already on the engineering team she was interviewing for. Imagine if there had just been one. Imagine if that one had been her manager. Okay. With so few women in technical or leadership roles, many potentially great employees will continue to feel discouraged about their long-term prospects in tech. And remember our statistics, 16% women, 9% underrepresented minorities, 2% underrepresented minorities who are women, or whatever that horrible number might be. the best way to make those numbers go higher is for more women and more people of color to step up and take on the potentially terrifying prospect of being an engineering manager, to be in a position to offer support and guidance for others that are like us. And I won't lie, being a manager can be really hard. But if we're going to successfully change high tech to be more inclusive and diverse, we need to have more of us acting as those role models, as those mentors, to be in a position to have a voice, to push for changes in those hiring decisions and in that company culture. And we can start small and go team by team. But together, enough of us do it, we bring those diversity numbers up. Thank you.